Hello and welcome to DOZ Monologues, hosted by Eturuvie Erebor. DOZ Monologues, also known as DOZ Chronicles Audio Stories, aims to educate, inspire, and drive societal change. All stories are written and narrated by Eturuvie Erebor, and all rights are reserved, including the right of reproduction in whole or in part in any form. This is episode 6, titled The Rift. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe, like, and share. Thank you. The Rift. As my plane touched down at Heathrow Airport, I let out a sigh and looked out the window, grateful to be back home. I thought of my son waiting for me at home, and tears filled my eyes. I felt grateful for another chance to hug him and show him my love. As the plane came to a halt, I remained in my seat. Passengers around me quickly unfastened their seat belts, relieved that a 6-hour flight had ended. They were eager to disembark and embrace their waiting loved ones. Mobile phones began ringing as individuals struggled to retrieve their bags from the overhead compartments. I ignored the chaos around me as I stared into the distance and became lost in my thoughts. My trip to Nigeria, although brief, had completely shaken me, and I knew I would never be the same again. No, not after learning that my own mother had tried to kill me. And for what? A house? I still could not comprehend it all. She was a selfish and manipulative woman. She had always been. However, this time she had gone too far and crossed a line she should never have crossed. And one thing was certain: a rift had been created, and our relationship would never be the same again. I found myself slipping into a reverie, recalling all the trials I had faced at her hands. Each memory tugged at me, a vivid reminder of the challenges that had shaped my journey. As a young girl, I was quite intelligent and eagerly told anyone who would listen that I wanted to become a medical doctor. I was the eldest of 3 children. My father, may his gentle soul rest in peace, was a kind and gentle man, while my mother had a contrasting personality. She was an immoral woman who, although married, had male friends, dressed provocatively, and engaged in extramarital affairs. I still don't understand why my father acted like he didn't see what everyone else did. But when I started secondary school, my parents broke up after my mother declared she was done with the marriage. She was pregnant by a man who was wealthier than my father, a civil servant, and she moved in with him. Initially, my siblings and I stayed with our father, as our mother requested. She was enjoying her life and didn't want any baggage from her past to ruin it. However, shortly after she gave birth to her child, the man she had the baby with disappeared, traveling out of the country. His family then expelled her from their home, stating that they did not recognize her as his wife and were unsure if the child was actually their son's. My mother felt she had no choice but to confide in her brothers, as returning to my father and their marriage was not an option for her. She had 2 older brothers living in America, and they stepped in to help her. One of them provided her with a furnished apartment in a building he owned, while the other bought her a car. My siblings and I started visiting her on the weekends, but we eventually moved in with her a few years later after our father passed away. By that time, I was just entering my final year of secondary school. My mother's brothers were very kind and offered to support our education up to doctoral level. I completed my exams and graduated from secondary school with excellent scores. My uncles were thrilled about the possibility of my attending university to study medicine, and soon I gained admission to a university close to home. However, my mother had different plans. She wanted me to go abroad, like many young women were doing, and build her a big house. Each time we drove out, she would point at houses. "Look at that house," she would say. "It belongs to so and so, whose daughter is abroad." I told her that many of the girls going abroad had little hope of gaining admission to university, but my situation was different. I was brilliant and had been offered a place. I also explained that we weren't struggling financially like some families who send their children abroad to work. After all, my uncles had promised to take care of us and support our education. She asked me to be quiet. "Are we going to rely on my brothers forever?" she asked. "You are considering going to school to study medicine. How much do doctors earn in this country? You plan to attend school for 7 years, but after all that time, you might end up with a salary that isn't even enough to afford a house. If you go abroad during those 7 years, you'll become wealthy and build large houses. You'll be able to move me out of my brother's home and put an end to the insults I have to endure from his wife every time I speak to her on the phone, just because her husband owns the house where I currently live." I told her most of those girls going abroad were forced into prostitution, and she said, "Don't be silly. Not every girl who goes abroad goes into prostitution. Some of them work as carers." My mother persistently urged me to travel abroad. She made it her mission to bother me at every opportunity. At first, I found it easy to ignore her, but when school resumed and I began attending classes, her pressure became overwhelming. Each time I proudly wore my lab coat and left the house, she would unleash a torrent of angry remarks, claiming that I would struggle and fail at school. She called me wicked, selfish, and inconsiderate. It was unbearable. Matters were further complicated when the university's academic staff went on strike for 6 months. In that time, she continued to ask, "Is this how you envision becoming a doctor? Is this truly what you want to do with your life? Your course already lasts about 7 years. If you accumulate a few strikes, how much longer will it take for you to finish? 10 years? When will you start working? When will you begin earning money? When will you get married and start a life?" She began to threaten to throw me out and to ask her brothers to stop funding my education. I didn't have direct access to my uncles, and knowing my mother, she could lie to them and claim that I refused to go to school, convincing them that their money was being wasted. If that happened, they would likely stop helping me. My father was deceased and unable to assist, and none of his family members were able or willing to step in. Therefore, at that point, I decided to go abroad. I was anxious about the unknown life that awaited me. Many of the girls I had heard about went to Italy, where they worked as prostitutes. But the woman my mother took me to see assured me that I was not going to Italy but to London, where I would work as a carer. She mentioned that I would also have the opportunity to attend school, noting that many carers often studied and became nurses. I was excited to hear that. If I became a carer, it would just become a matter of time before I worked my way up and became a nurse. I promised myself that even after becoming a nurse, I wouldn't stop studying until I achieved my dream of becoming a doctor. The preparations for my travel commenced. I flew out to London, UK on a fake passport, and upon arrival I found that what awaited me was different from what I had been told. There was no care work. It had been a lie. My passport was taken and I was forced into prostitution. After 2 years, I gained my freedom when I met Paul, an Englishman who was much older than me and had been married 3 times. He was kind to me and paid off my debt, and in return I married him. Paul was a blessing in my life, helping to piece together the fragments of my shattered existence and guiding me through the healing process. My marriage provided me with the opportunity to obtain my legal papers, which enabled me to start a medical degree course. Together we had a son, Freddie, but 4 years into our marriage, Paul suffered a stroke and passed away. His death left me heartbroken but financially secure, as I inherited the house we lived in and received a large sum of money from his insurance policy. I built my mother a house in Nigeria, sent my brother to America for his master's degree, and backed my sister's culinary business so that she could open her first restaurant in Lagos. I never intended to build a house in Nigeria. I was content with having enough money to continue my education, but my mother would not hear of it. "You need a house in Nigeria," she said. "How will people know you are doing well if you don't have a house in Nigeria?" Given that the cost of building a house in Nigeria was significantly lower than my inheritance and wouldn't impact my ability to fund my degree program, I decided to take the leap and build a house in Benin. After Paul and I got married, I visited Benin once and stayed at my mother's house. It was an unpleasant experience, so the idea of having my own home where I could take Freddie for mini vacations to Nigeria was very appealing. I wanted to avoid staying at my mother's or in a hotel and instead enjoy the comfort of our own space. I decided to build my dream home in Nigeria. I envisioned a big 6-bedroom duplex with a staff quarters and a swimming pool in a prime area of Benin City. When my mother informed me of the land's cost, I promptly sent her the money. My mother managed the building and often requested funds from me. After a few months, her demands began to exceed my budget, which caused me concern. When I asked her about it, she became angry and claimed that inflation had impacted the project, insisting that I adjust my budget accordingly. So I complied with her request. About a month later, I had a conversation with a friend who was also building a house in Nigeria, and I realized something was amiss. His project was about the same size as mine, but had been completed for much less money than I had already spent without having finished my building. When I shared this with my mother, she told me that my building just needed a few finishing touches before I could start furnishing it. This was encouraging news for me. However, when she requested a significant amount of money for the final phase, I asked her to give me a few days to arrange the transfer. On the day I was supposed to transfer the money, I received a message from a strange number asking me to come and check on my house. The sender claimed that I had no property and that my mother was using all the money I was sending to live extravagantly with her new boyfriend. I called the number, but it was turned off. I considered calling my mother to confront her about the message I received, but something cautioned me against it. Instead, I told her that rather than send the money she requested, I had decided to take a trip to Nigeria that weekend and would like to see my house. I quickly booked my flight, arranged for someone to care for Freddie, and prepared to leave for Nigeria. Little did I know that I was walking into a trap. I arrived in Lagos and took a local flight to Benin, heading straight to my mother's house. She seemed happy to see me, but also uneasy as she made small talk, asking about her grandson. There was a man with her who looked like he lived there. She introduced him as Samuel, and I thought he might be the person the stranger who sent the text had mentioned. He welcomed me as well, and they invited me to eat. I declined, explaining that I had eaten on the flight and wasn't hungry. I just wanted to see the house. My mother told me that I couldn't go to the house because it was locked and no one was on site. The foreman who had the keys to the gate wouldn't be available until the following day. She mentioned that she had booked me a hotel and I should go there to rest. The next morning I will be taken to see the house. However, I insisted that I would like to drive by it first. At that moment, Samuel said, "Listen to your mother, Aisosa. You have been abroad for many years, and Benin is not as safe as it used to be. You don't want to be moving around town aimlessly. Just go to your hotel and rest from your journey, and tomorrow you will go to the house," my mother added. I listened to their advice and allowed my mother's driver to take me to the hotel that had been booked for me. Once I arrived at the hotel, I took a shower and lay down to sleep. It was early in the evening when I woke up to a call from my sister. She had heard I was in Nigeria and was disappointed that I hadn't stopped by to see her in Lagos. I explained that my trip was impromptu and promised to make time to visit her on my way back. After speaking with her, I ordered an early dinner. Since I was still tired, I went back to bed after eating. I was in a drowsy state, caught between sleep and wakefulness, when I heard voices outside my door, followed by a knock. Without thinking about my actions, I climbed out of bed. Feeling a bit irritated by the disturbance caused by the hotel staff, I opened the door, and there stood a tall, dark, and somewhat rugged-looking man. A premonition that something was wrong washed over me, but before I could react, he pushed me back into the room and shut the door, locking it behind him. I opened my mouth to scream, but as I came face to face with his gun, my scream died in my throat. My heart raced in my chest like a wild stallion. I was petrified, and for a few seconds, this total stranger and I stared at each other, neither of us speaking. Finally, he broke the silence. "Pay close attention to what I say and follow my instructions exactly, and you will leave. I have no intention of killing you, but I will kill you if you disobey even a single instruction. Do you understand?" I nodded, tears filling my eyes as I thought of my son Freddie, back in London, who had lost his father less than 2 years ago and was about to lose his mother. I sank to my knees and put my hands together in a silent plea. "I have money," I told him, pointing to my handbag. "You can take it all." "I don't want your money," he said, "and do not speak to me again unless I speak to you. Do you understand?" I nodded quietly, tears streaming down my cheeks as I wondered what would happen next. Samuel had been right. Benin wasn't safe. I tried to recall my check-in process and the conversations I had with the hotel staff. Had I given any indication that I was visiting from another country? Perhaps my accent had betrayed me? As I considered how I had entered this predicament and how I would get out, the man's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Get up and get dressed quickly. We are leaving now. Switch your phone off and put it away." I got to my feet and dressed hurriedly at gunpoint. Dressing before this strange man took me back to my days of prostitution, when I had no dignity and the tears fell silently but uncontrollably. Once I was dressed, he said to me, "You can't take all your things with you. We must travel light. Put all your valuables and anything you will miss inside your handbag and backpack and leave the suitcase behind." I nodded and followed his instructions without question. Most of the items in my suitcase weren't mine. They were gifts I had bought for others, so I wouldn't miss any of them. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being kidnapped. Perhaps they planned to hold me for a substantial ransom. I recalled the kidnapping cases I had heard about, where things often went wrong and the victim was killed. A shiver ran down my spine as I thought about my poor son, who would be left all alone in the world. When I was ready, he took out his phone and dialed a number. "I am bringing her out," he said. "I can't kill her here. It's too dangerous. Escaping won't be easy. I will bring her to the front of the hotel and shoot her there, where it's easier to escape. Don't wait for me. Once you see me coming out, leave and we will meet up later." My knees buckled beneath me and I fell to the ground, weeping uncontrollably, pleading with him to spare my life. Without any emotion on his face, he said, "I told you I would kill you only if you don't obey my instructions. I am going to say it again. Obey every instruction I give you as we leave this room. Do not try to be stupid and do not draw attention to us or I will kill you. Wipe your eyes and let's go." Once again, I followed instructions. I had my handbag, put my backpack on, wiped my eyes and readied myself to leave. He put his arm around my shoulder, giving the impression that he was a friend. Strange as it seemed, I felt a little comforted and protected. How weird is that? As we approached the hotel gate, where there was a live band playing, with people gathered around eating and drinking, he pulled out his gun, fired into the air, and pandemonium arose. In that chaos, we fled and mixed with a crowd of people running and screaming. We walked through the bushy areas and arrived in Iyaro, a bustling part of Benin that seemed to never sleep. It was around 7 p.m. and unlike other areas where business and social activities were winding down, here everything was just getting started. He paid for a budget hotel room, and as soon as we entered, he settled into the dirty armchair and pointed to the bed. "Sit down and put your bags down," he said. "When is your flight?" I couldn't hide my surprise when he expressed interest in my flight date. "It's the day after tomorrow, in the morning," I said. "Good. We leave for Lagos tonight, before they find out I didn't shoot you and begin to look for you and me." "Who is looking for us?" I asked. "Who sent you?" "Your mother," he said, and my whole world stopped. He laughed dryly at my expression. "You are very naive, aren't you?" he asked, but didn't wait for my response. And to tell the truth, I couldn't have spoken even if I wanted to. "A few days ago, your mother reached out to me after you called to let her know you were coming from the UK to see your house. I received partial payment and was put on standby because they weren't sure if you would follow through with your plans. Once you arrived, I was informed and requested to meet with you at the hotel and kill you. I was given your photograph and told what room you had been booked into." I sat there dumbfounded, thinking about what he said. "You probably already know that there is no house or land. Your mother has been using the money you sent for the house project." "All of it? I don't even have a land?" I asked. "How is that possible? I have built a house for my mother and made her life comfortable, and I give her money monthly. Why would she steal from me? She couldn't have stolen all that money. There must be a house. She was sending me pictures." He laughed again. "What pictures? You really are naive. Houses are built everywhere in Benin. She can pick one and take pictures to send to you, but that doesn't make you the owner of the house. As for the things you have done for her, that won't stop a greedy person. Your mother is greedy, and so is her boyfriend. Nothing you give her will be enough. There is no house, and she paid me to kill you to cover her actions. My suggestion is that you let the house issue go and move on with your life." "Why didn't you kill me?" "I still might," he said, "if you put me in danger. But when I was given the job and your photo, for some reason, my conscience bothered me. And when I saw you, I knew I couldn't pull the trigger unless you acted like a fool. After our little talk, we went out and got a bus to Lagos. Frank, the hired assassin, said he would accompany me to Lagos and the airport to ensure my safety. He advised that in Lagos I should remain in the airport until my flight, as it was probably the safest place for me to be due to the security. It was around 8 p.m. when we boarded a bus to Lagos. Our bus was mostly filled with women, all dressed in identical Ankara dresses, who mentioned they were heading to Lagos for a crusade that will start around 11 p.m. As we traveled, they sang praises to God, clapping their hands and waving their timbrels. I loved the atmosphere and joined them in spirit, singing along in my heart as I thanked God for keeping me alive. As we approached Ijebu-Ode, one of the women asked the driver to stop the vehicle so she could ease herself. Frank immediately warned the driver that the area was dangerous at night and advised him to continue until we reached Shagamu, where there will be open and well-lit fuel stations to deter robbers. The women persuaded the driver to change his mind. "Driver, it's okay," they said. "We prayed before starting this journey, and we can't encounter any evil. Nothing will happen to us in Jesus' name." And all chorused, "Amen." Encouraged by their display of faith, the driver stopped the vehicle in a dark area, and all the women got out, even those who didn't need to relieve themselves, claiming they just wanted to stretch their legs. They huddled around the bus, and Frank grabbed my hand, pulled me out, and we walked a little distance from the bus. "Let's cross to the other side of the road," he said. And when we were there, he asked me to crouch. "This is not a safe place, and it's best not to stay around the vehicle in case thieves appear." He had not finished speaking when we spotted a figure and then another from a distance running towards the bus. "Lie down," Frank whispered as he lay flat on his back. I lay on my stomach, my head on his chest, and his heart raced like mine as we watched the women scream while being beaten and robbed. I had left my backpack on the bus, and I watched as the men boarded, realizing they were rummaging through bags. I was relieved that my passport, ticket, and money were in my handbag rather than my backpack. However, my laptop was in the backpack, and I didn't need anyone to tell me it was gone. After the men left, we returned to the bus and the weeping women. When I cried out that my laptop was gone, Frank turned in anger and slapped the driver hard across the face. "Are you mad?" he roared. "Didn't I tell you not to stop here?" Before the driver could say anything, he backed out an order for him to get behind the wheel and remove us from the dangerous spot. Fortunately, there were no more mishaps on the journey, and around 1 a.m. I arrived at the airport, where Frank and I bid each other goodbye. "You'll be safe in the airport," he said. "Don't leave, and make sure you don't call anyone until you arrive in London." I nodded, tears in my eyes, as I threw myself into his arms and hugged him tight. "Thank you for sparing my life," I said. He smiled, touched my cheek fondly, and walked away without a backwards glance. As I watched him go, I said a little prayer for him. I wasn't too naive to know that he would be in danger if it were discovered that he hadn't killed me. I prayed he would be safe and enjoy the same mercy he had shown me. The end. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of episode 6 of DOZ Monologues. DOZ Monologues will return next week with another episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave your comments and subscribe, like and share if listening on YouTube. To contact me, please visit my website eturuvieerebor.com or email me at eturuvie@eturuvieerebor.com. I invite all story lovers to explore my novels and novellas available on Amazon and Google Books. For audiobook enthusiasts, they are also on Audible. Thank you for listening. I am your favorite storyteller, Eturuvie Erebor, and I'll be here next Friday with another story.